If you click on the File tab, you have several tools and functionalities you could do within your File tab. I will not go through each of them. I will only go straight to the ones that I think would be useful for you. So first here is new project. Click on new project if you want to create a new project. So once I click on this, it brings me to this environment. I'm not going to dwell on this because I've already covered these in my previous video. So you can go to my channel and then you will see PyCharm tutorial, create new project, and Python file. So we'll just close this and then move on to the next one, which is a new file similar to new project. I've also covered that in my previous video. And the other important one will be this one, open recent. So here you will find any recent project you've worked on, so you could quickly select any, and then it gives you the opportunity to open them either on this existing window or on a new window. So the other important one is to rename your project. So you can rename your existing project. So once we click on this, we can here type the new name we want to give our project. So I'll just close this. So the one we're going to be dwelling on is on the settings. So this is where you can modify the appearance of your PyCharm IDE. You can modify the key maps. You can also work on the code settings. You can get different plugins. You can also do your version control, Git and GitHub, as well as modify your interpreter settings, install and uninstall different Python packages to your project, and other functionalities. So let's go quickly into the settings. Again, if you're on Mac, you will see this as preference. So you click on preference. For Windows, we are going to be clicking on settings. So once I click on settings, I have this setting wizard open. First, we're going to start with the appearance. So this is where you can change the color of your PyCharm IDE. To do that, we go to theme. You could select different types of themes here within the list. If you're on Mac, you will also see Mac theme among the list. I could decide to use Dracula, and once I click apply, and let's see what it looks like. This is what it looks like. Most programmers would prefer to use Dracula because they'll be spending long hours on the screen, and it wouldn't be nice to have the screen project to your eyes. So we can also change other ones and see high contrast, and click apply, and this is how it looks. I don't know if you like this. For me, I'm going to be using my IntelliJ Light for this tutorial. So I'll just select IntelliJ Light and click apply. And you could as well synchronize it with your operating system. Next here is your font. So you can customize your font type. You click on this drop down menu and you have list of font types that you could select. Maybe we'll try one. We'll try Vendetta Black and apply. And this is what it looks like. No, I don't like this. So I'll go back to what it was before. And that's this. And then I will click apply. And this is it. I like it this way. It looks cool this way, in my opinion. You could make your own selection. And over here, you could also change the font size. So currently I'm on 18. So if I decide to click say 10, you're going to see this is going to become very small for you to see. You see, it's very small now. I would take it again back to 18 as it looks bolder, and you can also see my screen. So this is 18. So you could change the font size to whatever preference that you want. Then down here you can change your presentation mode font size. So let's say currently is at 24. Let's say we could change it to 20 and click apply. To go to your presentation mode, all you need to do is to, let's close this, and then we go to view, and then we go to appearance, you select enter presentation mode, and once you do that, it turns the PyCharm environment into presentation mode. To exit the presentation mode, you hover your pointer to the top and then it opens up menu tab, and then we could go back to select view and then we click exit presentation mode. Yeah, so let's go back to our settings. Next here is your menu and toolbars. The menu and toolbars may not be important now for you because it just gives you the option to either add more folders to your different menus and tabs, and you can also remove folders from your main menu. So if we click on this and then click on this remove, this folder will be automatically removed. I don't want to remove this. I think the important one here you have is the system settings. Once you click on the system settings, it allows you to make modification to how you want the IDE to save at every time while you are working on your script. So I could decide to change it, say save every 10 seconds, or you could also increase it depending on what you want. Yeah, and then you click apply, and here you can also confirm before exiting the IDE. So it's going to prompt you if you want to exit the IDE. If you don't want it to prompt you to just terminate the process, you could just check this. Then here is my presentation assistant. So the presentation assistant allows me to see my shortcut keys and to select my key maps. So over here you have different key maps. So you could decide to select Emacs, Sublime, Text. So currently I'm on Windows, so I will use Windows. If you're on Mac, you would see the top list will be Mac Keymap. And then here you can change the duration of the shortcut keys that is displayed on your screen. So currently I'm using 8,000 milliseconds. And then you could also decide to align it to center, to left, to right, top, bottom. Currently it's at bottom. If you don't have presentation assistant showing on your screen, you can install presentation assistant by going to your plugins here, and then you go to marketplace and type presentation assistant, and this is it here. Then you can install it. It's currently installed in my system. So let's go back to the presentation assistant. And then over here you can also create an alternative key map. So we could select either Windows, again Sublime Text, or Emacs. So whichever one that you feel is your preference for alternative key map, you could make that selection here. So quickly let's go to again key maps, similar to what we've looked at now. So within the key map, you could get more key maps by going to the plugins, and there are several key maps that you can add to your project. So if we go back to plugins and then type in key maps, so you see there are different key maps here. You could decide to use any of these key maps that you feel comfortable to use, and then you can incorporate that. So that allows you, if you're already familiar with Sublime Text, you can just use Sublime Text. If you're familiar with Visual Studio key map, you can install that. So whichever key map that you're comfortable with or you're familiar with, you could quickly select the key map of your choice. So that's it for the key map. And then if you want to know what the key map is all about, so if we go to the editor tab, it's telling us some of the key maps for adding or removing characters. You click Alt and click, and these are a list of key maps that we could use to achieve any of these functions here. So once we go to the shortcut keys, we would again talk about some of these key maps. But again, I could show you where you can use your key maps. PyCharm has made it easy for us by providing us with reference to our key maps. So you don't need to memorize all the shortcut keys. You just refer to this tool here and then it gives you a list of shortcut keys you could use. So once I click on this, you see a PDF file opens, and within this PDF file is the Keymap that I could use for this my PyCharm IDE. So lots of shortcut keys, and what you could do, you could print this off and then you keep it on your desk, and at any point in time you need any shortcut key, you could make reference to it. You see here duplicate, you click Ctrl D and the line duplicates for you. So this is quite an easy way to learn how to use your key maps and your shortcut keys. So let's go back to the PyCharm environment. So I'll just show you a typical example of the presentation assistant I talked about. Once I use my shortcut key, let's say I want to duplicate the last line and I do Ctrl D, you see over here is the presentation assistant showing me the shortcut keys for Windows, and this is for Mac. So if you're on Mac, you use Meta plus D and all that. So that's what the presentation assistant does for us. So let's quickly go back to settings. I could use the shortcut key to go back to the setting, which is Ctrl Alt S, but let's just click on it. Once we go to shortcut keys, we'll be able to talk on those. So we've talked about the key maps, which I'm currently using Windows Keymap. You could make a selection of what key map that you want to use here over here. If you're familiar with Sublime Text, you could also use Sublime Text or Emac, or you could go to the plugin I showed you earlier on and you could install different key maps. Next, let's go to the editor. So once we click on this, within the editor, this is where we can modify the settings for our script, how we want our script to look like, how we want the code to look like. You could configure that setting in here. So once we click on general, you see this is what the font size with your control mouse wheel will look like. I'll just go straight to the important one that I feel will be useful for you, and that one will be the color scheme. So you could go to the color scheme, and then you could also make a selection from the list here of the type of color or theme that you want your script to look like. So currently I'm on IntelliJ Light, so you could try different options you have here. Maybe let's try this one. Which one do we try now? Maybe let's try Twilight. And if I click on Twilight and click on apply, giving me an overview of what it looks like. So it looks like you have set the dark editor color scheme. Would you like to set that theme for your entire PyCharm? So if I say no, and then we could close this, and then this is what it looks like for what I've selected. So if you're happy with this, then you could go with this S. You can come back to your settings and then you can make changes. So you can play around with all the options you have here. I think for me, I'm happy with the IntelliJ Light. So you could try, and then maybe you could comment below this video which one you prefer. So I'll just go with IntelliJ Light. Here you can also change your font like we did with the PyCharm IDE environment. So if we click on font, we can also make a selection of the type of font we want. I'm currently using JetBrains Mono, and then you could also change the size. You could change the line spacing of your font. And then one cool thing you could do here is you could enable, currently I enable this. If you look at yours, this is not enabled. So you could enable your font ligature. So what that does is, in this case, I'm deciding to use my mathematical relationship to represent my greater than or equal to sign. If I restore default, click on, let's say I disable this and then restore default, and if I do, and then you see here that the default is A greater than or equal to B, C less than or equal to D, and all that. I don't know if you're happy with that, but you could also modify it and then use this cool feature. So if I enable this, enable font ligatures, you see it changes to A greater than or equal to B. It looks cool. It looks a bit more mathematical. and that's what you can do within your font editor. And this is the important part on this editor. So let's go to the next one briefly, which is on your plugins. So once you click on the plugins allows you to install different plugins for your project. And if you go to the marketplace, you will see a list of all the different plugins you can install. And if you click on install, you see all the default plugins that you already have installed. Another thing you could do also is that you could come to this gear icon here, and then you could also import plugins from any repository or from your computer disk that you feel will be useful for your project. You could also import that in here and you are able to install it. And then over here is another gear for each plugin that you choose to install. You have another plugin settings here to either uninstall or to disable that plugin. Next, we're going to go to version control. So version control allows you to create programs and to keep track of the changes you make while you are creating your program. Within your local machine, PyCharm has a local history where you could see significant changes of your version control. So if we go to, before we come back to here again, I will just show you. If we go to file and then we go to local history, we should be able to see the history of this project that we've started working on. So I started working on this project on the 19th of January. That's when this script was created. And then if we click on this, we'll see what the script was as at when the script was created. So it was in this format, nothing was here, and this is the current version of the script. As of on the 25th at 1:32, the script was this way, but this is what has been added from where it was. So it shows us the improvement we have made on our project, the changes we have made, so we can be able to keep track of those changes. So when we go to this version control settings, so this is where we can modify the settings of our version control. For this is the background, you could specify what you want to run at the background of this your version control, like perform update from VCS in background and or all the stuffs here. Same for here, you could look at your change list and then you could modify the settings. So I wouldn't be bothered with the settings here at the moment. And the next setting here is for commit. So commit is like a checkpoint in the development of your project. So for any changes that you've made, if you are going to be using distributed version control, such as Git and GitHub, then you'll be interested in knowing how to use your commit to push those changes that you have made. So in here, there's not much we can do here. It's just for you to specify what you want your system to do each time you put in a commit. So you could want the system to automatically reformat the code before the commit is pushed in. So I could just check this box or check the box depending on what you want. I think I wouldn't be bothered much at this level, except for here, maybe you could decide to a prompt if there is a blank line between the subject and the body. So once you have a blank line between the main subject and the body, you could tell the system to give you a warning in the commit. So if you're happy with that, you could specify that warning sign, or if you want the severity to be high, you could then click on this drop down menu and then specify what warning that you want to be prompted. So I'll just leave it as just warning. Quickly we just go to Git. So Git is an open source distributed version control system. It's a remote repository where we can store our project or Python files on a server, and which could be able to track changes that we make using the Git distributed version control system. So basically This means that Git is a content tracker. Git is used to store content where you have your files in folders, and then you can be able to access previous versions of those files or changes that you have made to those files. Usually the PyCharm IDE comes with Git and GitHub plugins installed. So if you don't see Git and GitHub within your version control, you could go to your plugins and you can install that for free. So just click plugins, and then in my own case I already have it installed. So if I type in Git, I have a Git bundle installed, and I also have GitHub bundle installed. And so if you don't have yours, you go to Marketplace and then you can type in Git. So this is another extended version of Git. This is Git Toolbox, so which gives you extra functionality. So you could also decide to add this to your installation, but I'm okay with the one I already have installed, the Git bundle. Yeah, so I could work with this. So let's go back to Git. There is nothing much we could do here. I'll just show you an example of how to use Git. Again, you also need to have the Git installed on your machine. So to install Git, which is the remote repository or the remote server, you need to have it installed on your system. So you need to go to your browser and then you type Git for Windows if you're using Windows, and if you're on Mac you can type Git for Mac, and depending on what system you're using you could type that. For my case I'm using Windows, so I'll just type Git for Windows, and once you hit enter you have this option here. You click on it. Once you click on it, this is the Git for Windows. You can click the download icon here, and once you click it will start downloading, and then you can follow through the process to install. I'm not going to install this because I already have this installed on my machine. The only other advantage of using the Git is because it's a remote server, you have your project also saved in that repository. So once you have any failure on your system or your computer crashes, you can still access that project from your Git repository using Git. As you progress in your programming skills and you start collaborating with others, then it will be beneficial for you to get Git installed on your system. So let's quickly go back to our PyCharm, and then I'll just show you a typical example on how to use your Git. So I'll just OK this and then go to PyCharm. At least we've written enough code to be able to use our Git. So to do your first commit, all you need to do is to come to your VCS, your version control, and then you create a Git repository for your project. So I will click on create Git repository, and then I would want the Git repository to be on this project I'm working on. The project is Python example, so I'll click on it, click my OK icon, and then once this is done, if we go down to this drop down menu of this project, the project folder, we will see that this our Python file has turned red. So it's red because it's indicating that the Python file has not yet been added to our Git repository. So to add this to Git repository, all you can do is to right click and then you go down to Git and then you can select add. So once we click the add icon, now you see it will turn green. So I will click on add, and then I could also use a shortcut key which our presentation assistant is showing us here. So once I go back to look at this, let's say I click on it, you see it has turned green, which is indicating that this has now been added to our Git repository. Now that we have added this to the Git repository, the next step is to perform our commit, or to do the commit. To do the commit, you have different options. You could either come here and you see this Mac icon, and then you could click on it and then it will take you to your commit environment, or you could use the shortcut key which is Control plus K if you're using Windows. Or thirdly, you could come here and there's an icon here that says commit. You could click on commit. Another option is you can come down to this pip icon here. Once you hover your cursor around it, you see the Git and you see commit. Then you could also select the commit icon. So in this case, I'll just use this one here that is within this tab. So I will click commit. And then it tells me here that I have one file here that has not yet been pushed to commit. So I could now select that file, or if I want to select the whole default changes, you could just come here because you could have list of several files. And if there are specific files you want to push to your commit, you could specify those files and check those boxes. So because I just have one file here, I will just check this default change list file, and then I have all the file selected to be added to my commit. So if you observe here, we have on version files. So I'll comment on this on version files once we are done with the first commit. So what next we need to do is to add a message. So when next we see that, we should be able to know what our commit is all about, or what the changes we made is all about. So I can call this my initial commit, and then I can come here and click on the commit icon. Here we have commit and push. So this is if you have an external Git repository that is not associated with your machine, then you can use the commit and push. So in this case, we're already using Git repository that is installed on our machine. So I'll just click on the commit icon to get this committed. And once we click that, you see it's prompting me. It said I have one to do. So usually when you're working with collaborators, it wouldn't be decent to have your to-do list included in it. But however, because we're just using this as an example, we can allow to go through with this. So I will just ignore and then click to go ahead with the commit. So I'll click commit. Yeah, if you observe here, there's a little icon here prompting me if I also want to add the project configuration to Git. So what is the project configuration? So if we go back to our project here, and you see that the project, when we created it, came with some lots of folders and files and libraries and all these. So what it's asking is, do I want all these to also be pushed into the commit or into the repository? Ideally, I wouldn't want to have this included into the repository. I can come here, right click, go down and select Git, use the Git options to select add to Git ignore, and then add to Git ignore. Next, you select create to create the Git ignore file repository. Here is a prompt asking if I want to add the Git ignore repository file into my Git repository. This will depend on the files you want to be visible to your other collaborators. If you don't want your other collaborators to see the file, then select cancel. You can also choose to add this manually. I will select cancel to cancel this. Next, we go to commit. And if you observe here, you see that the number of unversioned files has reduced drastically. So next, we're going to right click and then also move all these files into Git ignore. Select Git ignore. And these are all the files that you have here. And you see that there's no longer unversioned files. We now have everything set up in Git, and we can make new commit as we progress in our project. So this is our project. I will show you how to add new commit by adding a new line of code, as well as make changes to our Python file and then make a new commit. Let's start with a new line of code. Let's say I type print, my name is Doxa. If you observe, you see that the new line of code is tracked with a green color code, indicating that a new line has been added to our Python file. Also, our Python file has turned blue, indicating that changes have been made to the Python file. Similarly, if we decide to make changes to the value of 2 to 5, you can also observe that there is a blue color code here to track these changes. So in PyCharm, the green color code tracks new line of code, while the blue color code tracks modifications made to the existing lines of code. So let us run this code and make commit to the new changes. The code ran successfully. Next, we go to make new commit. We can use Ctrl K, or we can use the icon on the top there. I will decide to use Ctrl K, which is a shortcut key. So I will type Ctrl K. And over here is my commit wizard. I can now add a statement here to show the changes that I've already made on this file. And once I'm happy with the changes that I've made, you see over here it shows that a new file has been modified. I can select the commit icon. Here it says one commit file has been added. So we can now track the commit that we have made. So you select Git icon, and over here is the initial commit I made, which was made on the 8th of February 2021 at 23:31. While up here is the new commit that we just made. So if I click on it, you can see that that file that turned blue. Click on this arrow key to see the difference and the changes made in the Python file. So when I click on it, I can now see changes made. Over here is the previous version of the Python file when the first commit was made. And over here is the recent changes made. I can click on this to close now. If you observe, each time my commits were made, there is a space created in between the files. This is because of the commit settings we specified. So if you come to settings, you observe that we selected the reformat code. So what happens is it reformats before each commit is made. Now that we've finished the Git settings, next is to go to the GitHub. I already have my GitHub account set up. If you don't have your GitHub account already synchronized to your PyCharm IDE, you can go to this addition icon and select from the options in the drop-down menu. You can log in via your GitHub password or with your GitHub token. Let's try to log in with our GitHub password by clicking on this. And once you click, an authorization window opens up for you to authorize JetBrains to synchronize your account to PyCharm IDE. If you don't have a GitHub account, I've done a separate video to show you how to create GitHub account and synchronize it in PyCharm. I will just cancel this. Similarly, if you want to remove a GitHub account, you can go to the account, select on it, and then go to the remove icon below here and click on it to remove that account. It's an external repository that allows us to share our codes with other collaborators. To share your Python file to your GitHub account, go back to your PyCharm homepage. On the Git tab, scroll down, select GitHub, follow the options to select Share Project on GitHub. Since I already have a GitHub account, it becomes easy to share my files. Once this page opens, you can fill in the necessary details. If you don't have your GitHub account synchronized to your PyCharm IDE, this wizard will provide you an additional role where you can paste your GitHub repository URL. I will show you an example on how to create your GitHub account and repository. So once you go to your GitHub account, click on the icon to create new repository. And once it's open, you can type in the name of the repository. And if you're happy with the name of the repository, you can go here and type a description of the repository, which is optional. Then you can select public. You can add a README file, which is a long description of the files in your repository. You can as well add the git ignore for files you don't want to track their changes. You can check the license, as this tells other users what they can do and cannot do. Once you're happy with the whole setting,
you can create a repository. Once the repository is created, you can go down to this place, copy the URL, and go back to your PyCharm environment, and then you paste that URL to the additional role that this shared project on GitHub wizard will provide for you. And once you're happy with the whole details, you can then go ahead and make other commit. You can see over here, I already have my URL linked provided in there. Once the setting is okay, you can then make your commit and then push to your GitHub account. In the GitHub, we also have Mercurial and other distributed version control repository, but I will not discuss on those. Next, we will go quickly to the project interpreter. Here is the project interpreter, where we can also modify our interpreter for our project by selecting any of the existing interpreters. You can also add new interpreter on the list. If I click on the add icon, I can now select and fill in the details for this. I will not go through this because I've already covered it in my previous video. Click on the addition icon if you want to add Python packages. I will also not go into details on this because I've also provided this in my previous video. So you can go back to my YouTube channel and then you will see the previous video to select on it and watch how to install packages. So let's go back to the PyCharm environment and close this. Next is your debug settings. I will not also go into details on your debug setting because I will do a separate video on debugging. To wrap it up in today's video, we have covered an overview on PyCharm file tab and tools. I've also shown you how to modify your PyCharm appearance settings, keymaps, code and script settings, plugins, version control, Git and GitHub, and an overview of your PyCharm project interpreter. In my next video, I will show you some useful shortcut keys and how to navigate and program with PyCharm IDE using shortcut keys. I believe this would enhance your programming skills. I hope you find this video useful. Please hit the like button and subscribe to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.